All right, guys, this is where we get to the exciting portion of combat sports coverage. Not that the rest was already exciting, but we get to the black belts, the big boys coming in town right now. Caleb McAllister is going to be taking on Mike Jones in the black belt 170-pound super fight title. How excited are you to be coming out to Vegas and getting some gold possibly?
Oh, I'm very excited. I've always loved Vegas. It's always been very good to me. I'm not a drinker or a gambler, but Vegas, like I said, it's the combat sports capital of the world pretty much. So I'm very excited to come out there and do what I do.
Yeah, most definitely, man. Tell me a little bit how this whole matchup with Mike John came about for you.
Well, I'm a big fan of Mike John. He's obviously and I'm going to be a big underdog going into this match. No question about that. He's very well known, very experienced competitor. And realistically, what I always say is if I'm going to travel, if I'm going to put myself through the hassle of flights and hotels and all this type of stuff, I'm not doing it for easy matches that I could do, just staying at the gym and just roll. If I'm doing something like that, I'm doing it because I'm trying to challenge myself, because I'm trying to step up and take on the best guys that I possibly can. So if I don't think I'm really jumping into the deep end with some really tough guys, then I'm not interested. And I know for a fact Mike John is definitely going to be a challenge, and that's why I'm excited.
No, for sure. It's one of the more featured matchups on this card. I'm super excited for it as well. For you, how did your whole jiu-jitsu journey start?
Well, originally, I actually started as a kickboxer and MMA fighter. I fought MMA for a long time. I think I fought 20, 25, something like that fights. So for me, MMA was always really my first love. Then as my wife and I started talking about having kids, and I got into my 30s and injuries started to pile up at the same time as the money in the grappling scene started to improve, the sport started to grow. We were kind of like, all right, so which sport do you want to focus on moving forward? And long story short, decided to focus for the last few years on the submission grappling, the pro grappling scene, and the rest is history. I've loved it.
It's funny that you mentioned that because it really has exploded. Like you could truly make a living off just,
Right.
submission grappling. I mean,
Which
look
was
at
not
like
always
Gordon
the case.
Ryan. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, for sure. It was definitely not always the case, even like 5 years ago.
absolutely. The
So
guys like, love them or hate them, they have grown the pool for all of us. And, we're all kind of reaping the benefits of that now.
100%. How many kids do you have?
Two kids, 4 and 2. My wife and I have had two so far.
Awesome. So how do you balance that, being a father and then also being a killer in the gym?
Well, the funny thing is, my wife is also elite martial artist. She's about to test for her purple in jiu-jitsu. She's a black belt kickboxer. She's a CrossFit competitor. So she's at the gym almost as much as I am, which means our kids probably spend as much time at the gym as they do at home, pretty much. So for us, it's kind of a family thing. It's not something that takes me away from my family. It's really a thing that I get to enjoy together with my family now. Obviously, I have to stay and put in pro practice and grind a little harder and all that type of stuff. But it's something that we do together and something that we all love, and it kind of helps us spend more time bonding as a family, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure. It's got to make it easy on you guys.
In a lot of ways, it is, yeah, 100%. The fact that I have the flexibility in my schedule, I can eat breakfast and eat lunch with my kids, and spend a lot more time with them during the day, in between practices and whatnot than most people who work a normal 9 to 5 do is a huge blessing. I don't think my kids realize that that's not the way that most families, run their schedule, but it's pretty cool that it works that way for us.
No, for sure. They'll kind of grow up on the mats too as well. So they'll be
Exactly.
trained killers in no time.
I always say, they don't, I'm never going to make them do what I do just because I love it. They need to know some fundamentals to be able to defend themselves. But as far as, competing, hey, if that's what they want to do, I'll 100% support that and do everything I can to help them chase their dreams. But beyond that, it's whatever they love, whatever they want to commit to and put the work into. I want to do everything I can to support that.
You're currently with Renaissance Academy of Martial Arts. How long have you been there?
I've been there my entire competitive career. Basically, my entire martial arts game developed from Jamie Ridgeway and all the people at Renaissance Academy.
Nice, nice. How do you like it there so far? Obviously, you've been there for a long time, so you got to be pretty comfortable
Yeah,
there.
over a decade. I love it, man. For me, loyalty always really mattered. I think it's really important for up and coming competitors, up and coming grapplers and fighters, you got to find a gym and a coach that you form a good connection with, that you trust, that they know what they're doing and they're going to guide you in the right way and support your goals and your dreams. And then beyond that, you have to trust them. You can't, the second something feels a little off, or maybe you take a loss, or you have a rough patch, whatever, like, oh, I'm just going to go over here where they enable me and do whatever I feel like I want to do. Like, well, no, you need a coach who tells you to do what you need to do to
Keeps you
get better.
accountable as well.
Exactly. And I'm very fortunate that with Jamie and all the people at Team Ram, I definitely have had that for a very long time. And I'll also say, it might give me almost a little bit of added motivation, since I was the first elite competitor, the first professional out of the gym, that it almost gives me more motivation to prove what I know, which is that the coaching and the training is absolutely elite, world class, not just, pretty okay regionally, but, we can hang with anybody on the planet, and it's almost a chip on my shoulder to prove that.
So you've been there for your entire evolution of your gym, just watching it grow and grow and grow.
Exactly. And it's kind of funny, like every day I see more and more of these guys and girls that are putting in almost as much work as I do and how good they're getting. And like, I tell you what, man, the next 5-10 years, there's going to be some real special talent coming out of Renaissance Academy. I can tell you that for sure.
Have you been in Virginia your whole life?
No, I was actually born in Connecticut and grew up in Vermont. So I was New England, kind of born and bred. I came to Virginia to go to college when I was, in my teens, and knew that I wanted to pursue martial arts seriously by that point. I had, obviously trained at a few different locations, and nothing that I was super serious about, just kind of visiting here and there, and found the Renaissance Academy while I was down here, and really formed a strong connection there and believed in what they were doing, and the rest is history.
Like you said earlier, it's super important to find somebody, a coach that you gel with really well, that you mesh with in it. Having somebody like that in your corner, how is it for you?
Oh, it's huge, man. Like, not only because of the elite level of coaching that Jamie and all these guys can provide in terms of, kind of remarkably ahead of the game, where you see people in like the MMA and the grappling world starting to do stuff. And I'm like, man, Jamie was telling us that was a good idea like 5 years ago. Like, what took you guys so long to figure it out? But beyond just the elite coaching, the standard of character, I guess you could say, that he expects all of us to hold ourselves to in terms of kind of the traditional tenets of martial arts, showing courtesy and respect to your teammates and to your opponents. Not that there's anything wrong with a little friendly trash talk here and there, but
Right.
there's a line you don't cross. You show respect, and you are there to develop as a person, not just as a fighter or as a competitor or as an athlete. He always says his goal is not to develop well-trained bullies. And I always thought that was a pretty cool way to approach the game, that you can try to be a classy, an exceptional human being in terms of your character, as well as an elite fighter, an elite martial artist. And that's always been my goal, to kind of pattern myself after that.
Now, are you one of the people who just focuses a lot on no gi, or do you like to be traditionally in a gi as well?
Well, the funny thing is, our school is part of the Pedro Sauer Association, which is well known for being very traditional, very precise, crisp mechanics, very like old school Helio Gracie like fundamentals, which means obviously it is more known for being in the gi.
Mhm.
So all that to say, I personally enjoy no-gi more. I exclusively compete no-gi. I train at least several times a week in the gi. So I'm maybe a little bit of a rebel in the association, I guess. Although there's certainly plenty of others who are very talented no-gi grapplers as well. But no, to answer your question, I do both. Although in terms of competition, I definitely enjoy no-gi much more.
No, for sure. Now, this is going to be a submission only contest. Do you prefer that type of matchup, or are you more of like IBJJF points guy?
I am a well-known IBJJF hater, so I will admit that. I'm not a big fan of a lot of the things that the IBJJF does as a governing body, although there obviously are a lot of very high-level grapplers who do compete for them, and I have nothing but respect for that level of talent. But I'm not a fan of all the extra rules that they add on, all of the moves that they ban, the nonsense for fighting for advantages, things like that.
Yes.
So no, I'm not a big fan of IBJJF rules per se. I don't mind points style tournaments at all. Like obviously, I'm a big fan of ADCC rules, for example, and other types of either judge or points based events. But at the end of the day, if I have to pick, sub only is about as I don't want to say tough minded of a rule set as you can get to, but there's no doubt in a sub only event. So if I have to pick, I definitely enjoy sub only.
It's definitely more primal. You know what I mean? It's the way it should be at the end of the day. They're always talking about if there was no time limits in the UFC, Nick and Nate Diaz would be undefeated.
Yep. I don't think there's just about anybody who could beat those two if you didn't have a time limit.
So for you coming out to Vegas, it's a little different than Vermont. We definitely have a dry heat. How are you looking forward to dealing with this heat?
It's funny because being from Vermont, I actually really like the snow and I really like the cold weather. But as far as training and competing, I do not mind the heat at all. Like it, in a way, it almost, kind of separates the kids from the adults as far as whose conditioning is on point, who's really ready to take on the cardio challenge. So as far as the heat goes, when it comes to competing, the hotter the better, as far as I'm concerned.
So where I train at, we don't have any AC in our building. And if it's usually it's about 120 outside. So inside the gym is probably about 130 because all we have is just a bunch of steel doors and it's just baking the entire time. So you really, like you said, separate the boys from the men real quick.
Yep, 100%. I love that.
Coming out here, what is going to be your game plan against Mike John without getting obviously too much into it?
Well, I mean, he's a very well-rounded opponent. So to some degree, you can't be too fixated on one game plan because there's no massive glaring weaknesses. He's dangerous everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
He can play the whole package. He can play a little bit of everything. So to some degree, that means I need to be comfortable with whatever he can throw at me. You can't get too focused on I think it was the Tyson quote, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth.
Exactly.
I don't believe he's going to be punching me in the mouth, but the principle still applies. I have to be ready for whatever he throws at me.
No, for sure. You go in there and you're fixated on, this is what I'm going to do when I start, and this is what I'm going to do once he reacts to this. And what happens if he doesn't do exactly what you expect him to do?
Exactly. You can fall apart, if you're an inexperienced competitor who gets too focused on, I need to do this, and I have to get this grip, and I have to be in this position. Well, if that doesn't happen, you better be able to roll with it.
No, for sure. And I think that's the beauty of jiu-jitsu, you know what I mean? Just kind of going on the fly and just doing what you need to do to win the match.
Yes. And that's where the art really comes out, is who can start to flow and make things happen in the moment.
Now, 170 pounds, how easy is that for you to make? Do you cut a lot of weight for that at all?
Very easy. I walk at 165 to 170. When I was doing MMA, I fought 55. I just don't bother cutting for grappling. So I'm a tall, skinny dude, but I don't have any trouble making 170 at all.
That's good, man. Especially with the traveling, I would hate to have to cut weight and do all that stuff.
If I'm not getting punched in the teeth, I'm not putting myself through that.
For sure. What do you kind of do? Obviously, you said you spend a lot of time on the mats and in the gym, but what do you do outside of that? What is Caleb McAllister like outside of the gym?
Well, as far as work, I actually do a little bit of, I have a small audio production freelance company that I do kind of in my spare time when I'm not either coaching or training myself for audio production for audiobooks and podcasts and things like that. So it's kind of a way for me to almost clear my head from the training and the grapplings, the martial arts side of things, and do something completely different. And even if it's not for work, I've always been a huge bookworm. I really enjoy reading or listening to audiobooks, listening to podcasts, things like that. So a lot of the time I'll either do that or, depending on what my kids are doing, spend time with my kids, with my wife and family. And that's really how I relax, is spending time with them.
How did you get into the whole audio engineering part?
Well, I always knew that I wanted to be self-employed. I knew I didn't really want to do the 9-to-5 thing. And I knew that I wanted to pursue martial arts. I wanted to pursue fighting and grappling as a career. But I also knew that I didn't want my chasing of my dreams to mean that I wasn't able to support my family. Because early on, none of us are making, great money from this. Even, doing it for a while. This isn't the easiest way to get rich by any means. So I wanted to find a way to provide for my family while still being able to chase my dreams. And that's something that I encourage really all of my up and comers to find uh, ways of earning a living that are flexible, even if you're not, making a fortune from it, just enough to keep a roof over your head, food on the table, which allows you to focus on your training and on your competing without the stress of, man, I hope I don't get evicted next month. So that was always my goal, and that's worked out really well.
I think that's super important because you get a lot of guys who, kind of get stuck in that like 9 to 5 grind. And I mean, sometimes they can't make it to the gym and it really, stagnates their abilities and what they're able to grow.
Exactly. Very much so. And I'm incredibly blessed that God's provided an alternative to that where I can, feed my kids and give them a comfortable home to live in and also chase my dreams at the same time. My wife, Rachel, has always been an incredible supporter and motivator on that front and made a huge, huge difference in being able to chase my passions and do what I do.
It's also very important too. A king is only as good as his queen.
100%, man.
Now, what's kind of like your weekly training routine?
Typically, I train about 6 days a week. I mean, really 7, but the day 7 is mostly just motivation, or mostly just mobility, rather, in terms of, some stretching, some yoga, some, just kind of recovery work. The other 6 days, I'm doing a lot more in terms of the hard training, in terms of sparring and rolling, and the conditioning work to try to make sure that my cardio, like we said earlier, is on point.
Now, we talked about like, the future of Renaissance Academy. Who should we be looking out for?
You got a lot of up and comers, man. Tim Player and Jeremy Angian, these incredible up and comers. They're both getting very close to competing at black belt level. One's brown, one's purple, but they are not far away from competing at that level. They are both absolute killers. As far as the younger up and comers, dude, some of these whites and blues are absolutely amazing. We got Ashton Brown, Sydney Davis, Jacob. Like some of these, I could go for hours on how hard some of these guys and girls work. It's truly going to be something special to see, and I'm really excited to be a small part of that.
Right. Yeah. You kind of almost been there throughout their entire journey. So being able to watch these guys, come in as day one white belts to now being, killers on the mat. Like, how has that been rewarding for you?
Oh, it's huge. And I always say, to some degree, the coaching is more stressful when they're competing than me competing myself is. But it's also, like you said, incredibly rewarding to see these guys and girls who, I'll be honest with you, I push them very, very hard. I ask a lot of them in terms of the amount of work that I expect my competitors to put in. But these guys and girls step up every day. They're on the mat every day. They're pushing themselves as hard as they can possibly push themselves. They're not making excuses, and they're not, slacking off and skipping practices. And then when they're willing to put in that kind of effort and make that kind of sacrifice, it's a huge privilege for me as a coach to be just a part of that story and to do everything that I'm able to do to help them achieve what their dreams are.
Once your competitive days are behind you, is that a plan for yours to coach as well?
Yes. I mean, to some degree, people almost wonder, why have you not done that yet? But the fact is, I've always really loved the balance of the coaching and the competition at the same time. So the fact is, I do love coaching, but not at the expense of, oh, I'm just going to be a full-time coach. I'm only going to do that, and I'm not going to compete anymore. Whereas a lot of people, they almost look at it sooner as where they want to go as soon as they're, out of their 20s. I don't really look at it that way. I think that me as a coach makes me as a competitor better. And me as a competitor makes me as a coach better because I can put things to the test when I compete and tell them, okay, this works against elite world-class black belt competition. So you as blue belts, purple belts, etc., this is what you can be focusing on now because it's going to still be there for you no matter what level you achieve, if that makes sense.
No, for sure. And what are those type of things that you would give to your students, those type of insights?
In terms of the actual approach to their game?
Yes.
The biggest one is simply the importance of work ethic. I've always said there are way, way more talented grapplers, way, way more talented martial artists than me out there. and I want to be able to beat as many of them as possible. So how do I do that? Well, it means I have to be willing to work harder than they work. I have to be able to get by on work ethic where talent falls short. I always tell them we control what we can control. We don't control how talented is my opponent. We don't control how talented am I. We don't control how fast are they. We don't control what are they good at. All you can control is when you step onto that mat, do you know 100% for a fact that you did everything you could do? You pushed yourself as hard as you could push yourself. You controlled everything you could control. And if that's the case, that takes a lot of the nerves and a lot of the pressure away. At that point, just go out there, light them up, have fun, play loose, and do your thing.
For sure, man. Well, I don't want to take too much more of your time. I've already taken about 20 minutes for you, and I see you're sitting in the car sweating your ass off, so I will get you out of this environment here. But before I let you go, I want to give you an opportunity to give a shout out to your teammates, sponsors, anyone that's really helped you along your MMA and grappling journey.
Yeah, 100%. Like I said, my team at Renaissance Academy of Martial Arts in Virginia, Jamie Ridgeway, everybody there. Anybody who's in the area wants to stop by, you're always welcome. But I definitely want to thank all those guys and girls. And of course, most importantly, my wife, Rachel, my most important teammate. I could not do this without her.
Any last words for Mr. Mike John before you guys step on the mat together?
I'm excited to meet you, man. I've never met you before. I know we're going to put on a show. Let's give them something to look at.
No, for sure. If you guys aren't able to make it down to Vegas, combatsportscovers.com is going to be providing the pay-per-view for this event. It's an amazing stacked card. I believe there's 11 super fights on it. 3 of them are title fights. Mr. Caleb McAllister is going to be one of those title fights, sir. I cannot wait to meet you in Vegas. I will be commentating the pay-per-view, so I will be getting to know you a little more before we do this. I will see you at the weigh-ins on August 6th, and can't wait to see you in Vegas, man.
I can't wait to meet you. Thank you so much.
Of course. You have a good day, sir.
You as well.